Thanks for joining us today here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates. 419-794-3030 is the phone number. That's 419-794-3030. The website, arhq.com. France has certainly been in the news lately. Its president recently raised the country's retirement age from 62 to 64. He argued it was necessary to save France's pension system, and the fact that he did it without legislative vote spurred massive protests. So you have to wonder, and could the same thing happen here in America when it comes to Social Security, or is this something we should do like the government has and just kick that can down the road and say, we'll worry about that later?
Well, actually, 62 is young. Mm-hmm. I mean, over in France, I know, I've never been, but our retirement age has always been like 65. Yes, you can retire anytime you want, and you can actually take Social Security at 62. Obviously, we've talked about that ad nauseum, whether that's the good, bad, or the indifferent way to do it. And I've heard you and Nolan talk a lot about Social Security system and running out of money, and the talk is all over the place saying that in 2023, Social Security system is going to go broke. And they talk about Medicare and Social Security system being broke. Me personally, I think by the time maybe even you and my son, I think they're going to bump that age maybe even up to 70. I've heard talk about it. What's your opinions on that, Chaz?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, if you really want to make somebody mad and start a riot, talk about taking their Social Security or making them have to wait even longer. So politically, I don't personally think that's going to be a viable option. I mean, or at least I should say that probably is one of the more acceptable political options. It certainly isn't going to be something where someone's going to, by 2033, have a reduction in their benefits of 25%. It's generally those are the two main competing solutions to correcting the Social Security problem, which we know exists. We know, I've been knowing for 20 years, after we're doing case studies on it in my MBA class about what's going to happen with Social Security. So I think it's definitely a solution, and I think it's actually, like everything else we talk about, there's pros and cons, but this one does have some staying power, and I think one of the main pros to extending the age at which you can collect Social Security is that it could definitely shore up the gap, and there's a significant gap there. We recognize that, but creating, pushing the date out a little bit, I think is going to give us a significant amount of stability. It would help, definitely the long-term prospects for the plan.
Well, that makes perfect sense. But what's actually going to happen for those people that are relying on it as, a piece of their retirement?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing I always say with different types of funds and, kind of like the independent income system, it's not the whole pie, it's a piece of the pie. Well, what about those people that are actually relying on Social Security to actually retire? Won't that be a lot harder for them?
Yeah, that's a significant challenge. That's definitely a concern. And, I've mentioned in the past, I think the average American has only about $10,000 saved for retirement. And, when you look at what Social Security really is, we try to make people, before they make that decision, change their paradigm from looking at it as far as a paycheck to an asset.
Sure.
Meaning, if I were going to offer you $700,000 right now, you'd probably pay attention. You'd probably do a lot more introspective and just planning to make sure you were able to get that money. If I said it's between $500,000 and $700,000, you're going to pay attention. But when they hear $1,700 a month, they're like, I'll just take it. I'll just start it. And so changing the paradigm shift, making sure that you recognize the value it is for everybody, but particularly, you're correct, for the person that relies on Social Security more so than any other financial asset, it's increasing the retirement age could make it a lot harder on a lot of people, if that truly is the case where the average American has only about $10,000 saved. So it's going to delay their retirement, definitely. And, this is something that I've seen just in being in business. We work with a lot of first responders. I have a few clients that are police and fire. I have a fire chief who was happy to get out because, had a great career, but just physically demanding on their bodies. Even, GM workers and just regular factory workers standing on concrete. Nurses, for instance. I didn't think about this, but I mentioned that in my mom is a nurse, and she's like, standing on your feet in concrete all day long is not good on your body. So for those workers, particularly, Scott, that have physically demanding jobs that they can't work at physically any longer, delaying Social Security eligibility is going to be a big deal for them.
I met with a client last week, and he went to one of my events. He comes in, and we were talking about that. And he was really, really educated himself on Social Security. He knew exactly where he was and where he stood and why. And he said exactly what a lot of people say. You know what? By gosh, I've paid into Social Security. I'm taking it, and he's not 62; he's going to be 65. But here's something else, and I know we've talked a lot about this when it comes down to the question is, should I take Social Security or not? We ask about genetics, and he said, I didn't even ask him the question. He said, my dad passed away at 57 years old. My mom passed away at 59 years old. I've got a brother that passed away, and he wasn't 60 yet. And he says, so far, I'm at a point where I'm 65 years old. I've passed all of them, and I feel pretty good at this point. And he knew exactly the reasons why he should or shouldn't take it. And I actually mentioned to him, I says, well, Chaz, I work with Chaz a lot, and if Chaz were to come in here right now and you said the things that you said, he would advise you to take Social Security, right
That's
now
true.
and start collecting on it because he doesn't know. He could, with his family genetics, he could be sitting on a ticking time bomb, and he said also, I enjoy what I do. I enjoy my job. Unless they really crank me off and give me something that I don't like to do, I'm planning on continuing to work a little bit longer, So for people that are able to work, like you said, your mom with being a nurse and on her feet a lot, if you're able to work and, 70 may not be a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's a really good point. It actually is a positive thing then if you wait and work and, just stay in the workforce a little bit longer, stay engaged mentally even, and emotionally. I think that's a big part of the retirement anxiety is who am I now? How do I recreate, my identity because you've been a particular worker or a nurse for so long or, a GM employee and now what? So staying in the workforce helps not only make sure that you have assets that are going to last in case you do outlive your longevity, but also it keeps you engaged mentally and emotionally a little bit as well.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both, both ways when it comes to Social Security and that. But, I don't know. We're coming up to the end of this segment here, but I this is just me. I don't know. I probably shouldn't say personally, but they're not going to let Social Security go bankrupt.
Probably
not. I mean, they're spending money like drunken sailors, right? I mean, I just don't see how that they're going to do that. Like you said, is there going to be a reduction in benefits for someone that all of a sudden at 70 or in 2032 the money runs out? Are they all of a sudden going to say, hey, sorry, we're not going to pay you anymore?
Yeah,
there's just no way that's going to happen.
The saving grace is if that did happen, certainly not, paying benefits out. I know that's not going to work. But when you look at the budget, Social Security and entitlement programs and Medicaid, Medicare are half the budget.
Yeah.
The other part is aerospace and defense. So there's not a whole lot of room that they can cut there. If that does come down to it, you have to wonder what they would. But outside of that, if they simply just extend retirement benefits for Social Security for a few years, that could actually benefit the economy. It could actually be a boost to the economy because think about that's just that much longer of people paying into the 401k and staying invested and just staying on their jobs longer, paying into the Social Security system. So might benefit younger employees or younger workers as well. So again, there's just a lot of variability surrounding Social Security decision-making, both at the government level and at a personal level. It's a very complex issue, so it's one you definitely want to work with an advisor on to get it right.
And because you can't control what the government is going to do, when it comes to Social Security, all the more reason for you to make sure that you get your claiming strategy correct. It's a paradox, right? The people who need the money, the people who would benefit the most from claiming at 62, and I'm not talking about the ones who are fearful of the solvency of it, the people who actually need the money are the ones who could benefit the most from a larger benefit. But by doing just that, by claiming early, they're going to see a reduction in benefit. But it is a complicated thing. That's why there's hundreds upon hundreds of different ways to claim Social Security. You want to make sure you figure out the best one that's going to work for you and your spouse. And again, I want to remind you, the good people at the Social Security office, and I do mean that, the people who do that, they are not allowed to give you advice on that. You want to make sure you figure that out ahead of time, and that's all part of the plan that the team at America's Retirement Headquarters helps you with to get started, figure out what's going to work best for you. 419-794-3030 or online, arhq.com.